Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far, and with OpTic confirming their place, if it's still needed to be confirmed, as the #1 team in the game. They've explained exactly how they've managed to conjure up this 5-0 record so far this season against Atlanta FaZe. Prolute believing that yes, there is still a mental block in place from the FaZe side, and Dashy saying they're not going to get complacent anytime soon. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Everybody else at the channel, thank you very much indeed for doing that. I'm planning to dive in today. Really cool to see, you know, Spart and Prolute and Scrappy. We'll talk about him, of course, in the Subliner series later on today, coming into the scene and having an awful lot of impact, right? And Spart kind of shows a story right here of not too long ago. And Prolute, honestly, yesterday was an absolute monster for the OpTic guys, there's no doubt. Just did want to touch on Scrappy real quick. We will talk about this series in more detail later on this evening, but he was an absolute monster as well. So it does seem like bringing substitutes in this season is the absolute factor. I do wonder whether Los Angeles Thieves will look at Pentagram on the bench and decide to do something about that over the coming days and weeks, to be honest, because these guys are hungry and they're performing incredibly well at that. This just to mention from Doug, I don't know what's going on here. Like, he said there was an announcement tonight. That didn't actually happen. It's like, well, he reckons it's some sort of competitive Call of Duty announcement. I believe he said in the reply here that the kind of 10x Doug thing on Paris Legion isn't going to happen. So he's not joining Paris, but something else might be going on. So I suppose we'll see what this is, but thought I want to mention it regardless. Now, these are the qualifier standings after week 2. This doesn't show map count, and map count is important actually, just because the Subliners, for example, at 2-2, they play OpTic next week. And of course, well, in terms of World Championship qualification, the New York Subliners are a bit more precarious position right now, actually, because they could easily go 2-3 if they lose to OpTic next week. But I believe their map count should still be good enough to get them into the winners bracket for the major. And if they are in winners bracket at the major, then you know, they should be okay at least to make some sort of run. Because that's the thing with New York right now. We'll talk about them later today. But if they get, and really any of the teams down there, like if they get a couple of top 4s in these majors, maybe a grand finals appearance, that's going to put them in prime position to qualify for the World Championship. Because right now, anything can happen down there, honestly. But anyway, these are the kind of the qualifier standings within the qualifier. Rokkr now 4-0. OpTic play next weekends, but are 3-0 currently. Surge, FaZe, Ultra, Subliners 2-2. Every other team is in a more precarious position. Legion, of course, are out of it already. Guerrillas, they're going to have a hard time getting to winners, but like it's really difficult to say which of these teams are going to make it through. And of course, Thieves at 1-2, they don't have the easiest run from here either. They play OpTic next weekend as well, so difficult time for all involved. But to me, it's kind of crazy to see that I think some of the top teams in the game outside of OpTic and FaZe are Rokkr, maybe Surge have been on the up lately, Ultra and New York certainly. Like some of the teams that are actually at the top, the likes of the Breach, Ravens, Guerrillas, they're at the bottom here, right? Which makes things ever more difficult to call as time progresses. This also from the TacticalRab Academy I thought was kind of a crazy stat. This I guess includes General as well, but Prolute has more wins now against Atlanta FaZe than Ravens, Paris Legion and Los Angeles Thieves combined throughout CDL history. That is a crazy stat that none of these organizations have ever beaten FaZe in any series from Modern Warfare, Cold War, and I guess this year so far in Vanguard as well. So that is quite remarkable. But yeah, Prolute, you know, 1-0 I suppose in his series up against Atlanta FaZe. And just to mention this actually kind of during the series itself, the hardpoint KD comparison when they were head to head, I thought this was quite remarkable actually, because this is the season KD, Cell of course with a 1.30, Scump and Shotzi with 1.05s, but when Scump plays FaZe, look at that, it's a 1.26. Like that's in I guess 4 series so far this season. Now it's 5, it might be somewhat different after this, but I mean it's probably not too much different actually, because Scump probably did have about a 1.25 in this series or something, right? So rather interesting that Scump seems to turn up massively whenever he plays against the Atlanta FaZe, and of course they win this series last night. It was a 3-1, wasn't a complete blowout, but pretty much all the respawns were very comfortable for OpTic. I've never really seen FaZe get blown out like this. It's rather rare that it happens, and it does feel like sometimes FaZe do get a bit shell-shocked when they play this OpTic team, especially when Prolute's dropping crazy numbers as well, and Shotzi's an absolute nightmare to deal with on this map as well. Like, you definitely don't want to be playing this guy on Berlin, and this, I mean, this is probably the most comfortable map of all 4, to be honest, that they played, and even in that Search and Destroy, like OpTic recognised they made a fair few mistakes, right? They could have even won that Search and Destroy. They believe, I mean, so far this season, their Search has been better than FaZe's Search. Of course, FaZe has been working an awful lot on it, but like, let's say it gets to a point where OpTic and FaZe are 50-50 in Search and Destroys. Right now, their respawn almost seems way ahead, right? Especially because FaZe lately, at least coming into this series, were pretty much over the last few weeks the best hardpoint team in the game in terms of stats. And both games right here, they got drastically outslayed. It's like, I mean, look at the series stats actually, right? A 1.38 for Prolute, 1.25 for Dashy, 1.22 for Shotzi, 1.20 for Scum, right? So obviously this is all across the respawns, but yeah, it's not going to be a pretty sign for FaZe when you're on the receiving end of this. And Prolute was certainly a big part of that. He was the series MVP, took over the control. His Search and Destroy also is phenomenal. Didn't really get to show it yesterday. But of course, every piece of this team had a huge role to play. And who knows when Illy's going to be back, of course. That is still a question that is very much up in the air. They have said and made it very clear that when Illy is ready to go again, they will sub out Prolute to bring Illy back into the team immediately. But I'm not sure if that's, you know, the best idea in the world, right? Because Illy might need some time to get back up to speed again. And, you know, if when his thumb becomes all good, which is far from a guarantee it's going to be, right, to what we've heard over these last few days. I'll definitely keep you guys updated on that one. But again, this is what Dashy has to say, and also the other OpTic guys, they have their explanations as well. Misplayed some clutches in the surge, some solid respawns, right? So I thought it was kind of good that Dashy and the like, and he also says here in a second in an article we'll look at that, you know, they're going to make sure they don't get complacent, right? Yes, they won 3-1, but immediately their mind goes to, okay, look, we made some mistakes here. We could have won this series 3-0, right? Should have won that search and destroy. I'm sure they are thinking with the 3-1 advantage they had. And as Cinder says, teamwork is looking and sounding great. So he reckons that even with Prolute in the team, like the system they have is obviously working so well when Prolute can just slot into the team and have series like this and not detract from the rest of the squad as well, right? Because the rest of the squad was obviously also frying. And this is what Rambo says, right? Good reps this week leading into the match put us in a good position to do what we did today. Still some inconsistencies we have to clean up, right? So this is what I love from Rambo from a coaching side, right? That he's, you know, always looking at where they can improve. Because I mean, look, it doesn't matter they're 5-0 against FaZe so far this year. What matters is doing this when you get to the majors or at the World Championship, for example. Because as it looks right now, OpTic and FaZe, you know, number 1, number 2 teams in the game. Wouldn't be surprised if that's your World Championship Grand Final this year, right? And that's when it mattered to do this rather than in the league play games. But of course, it's good to keep up the undefeated record this season because I'm sure it's playing on FaZe's mind at least to some degree. Now, Shotzi doesn't believe it is, or he's just kind of, you know, saying this a kind of classy response, you could say. But you know, Sean Collins says right from the Dallas News, we'll look at one of his articles here in a second. But you know, he was kind of asked Shotzi whether FaZe or whether OpTic are in FaZe's heads. It's probably not anything mental. They definitely respect us as a team though, and they know we're capable of having really good matches against them. Of course, they're well undefeated so far this year. Something close. This one probably not, to be honest, at least looking back on the series in terms of the slaying department. And this is the article. So Sean Collins asked some questions to the OpTic guys after the series concludes. Thought there was some interesting words here from Rambo, at least early on. He said that OpTic just turn their level up when they play FaZe. It seems he reckons that against the big series and the big matches, they kind of come at a new level even to what they play against the other teams, which I thought was rather impressive. And these are some further words as well, actually, I thought was interesting. So as Rambo says here, you're not going to kill top tier players in a good position. Nobody is hidden from that, even, you know, and not even FaZe, right? So saying that, like, look, if you're setting up well, if your rotations are good, like, you're just going to absolutely dominate the slaying, right? Because you're in the power positions. And Dashy has some words on this to say, you know, Brandon and Dashy Hotel, we're clicking, and I think the biggest thing is we don't plan on becoming complacent anytime soon. We're always adding new stuff so we aren't falling off or becoming easier to read. That's kind of a key thing, actually, for teams that are won events, like Los Angeles Guerrillas, the New York Subliners, this type of stuff. As time has progressed for those teams going into the Prem in Los Angeles Guerrillas case or going into Major 3 in the Subliners case, everyone has been looking at their search and destroy, their respawns. What are they doing? Where are they setting up? Because they were, of course, new teams for those events. Therefore, everyone's going to look at what they're doing. Of course, that's going to be the same thing for OpTic, right? I'm sure, like, well, FaZe are trying to heavily counter-strat what OpTic are bringing to the table, and they're constantly coming up with new ideas, new kind of flavors to their search and destroy gameplay and their respawn break-offs, I suppose, as well. That's putting them in a very strong position indeed. So Dashy's like, look, we're not going to get complacent, not going to slow down, going to keep adding new things to our gameplay as well. And of course, they want the number 1 seed of the World Championship as well, right? But I got to share this quick clip here from Prolute because he's kind of talking in this clip, well, in the post-game interview about the series that they had. And I thought his words were rather interesting, right? He seems incredibly confident in the setup that they have on this OpTic team, saying that, yeah, he does reckon that FaZe have a bit of a mental block, right? They've lost to OpTic now with the Illy team, with the General team, now with the Prolute team as well, and also saying that he was effectively just having his way with them, which, you know, I thought was some quite spicy words.
I gotta ask you, man, you know, you were watching the league earlier before, now you're actually in it. You saw what OpTic has been able to do against FaZe. Now that you're playing with this team, what do you think gives this team such a massive edge going against that FaZe?
Honestly, I feel like they just have a mental block against them. Like, honestly, in that series, I was doing whatever I wanted against them.
All right.
Straight up. I feel like OpTic's respawn is really, really good. Like, it was so easy to fill in the role and just, like, play my game and just talk as, like, as a leader, and it was super easy.
There you go.
Playing your game, you did exactly that. 90 and 65, 1.38 against the Atlanta FaZe.
1.38?
Yeah, man, you were killing it. Good stuff, man. Excuse me. But,
crazy. I mean, those are, like, I still see FaZe as a threat because they're still a really good team. If, like, they catch us on an off day, like, it could go wrong. But as long as we just keep practicing and keep playing good leading up to the major, it should translate into LAN.
And even this from Crone I thought was funny, right? He has like a content warning on this one, because if you open it up, you'll find this. Whereas I guess this is only 4 series, because I'm pretty sure you can only fit 4 of these in a tweet. But yeah, so far this year we've had a 3-2, a 3-0. I'm guessing this excludes the one at the Pro-Am Classic, but it gets the point across that OpTic every single time have taken down FaZe in most of these series relatively resoundingly, which is, well, of course, quite the surprise coming into the year. And I do also wonder about, I don't know if I've mentioned this on the videos before, about the kind of Atlanta FaZe dynasty that was being discussed, because last last year, everyone said, okay, wow, FaZe, they're on course for a dynasty. They dominated the year. Like, my perspective was always they needed like another couple of event wins this year to kind of cement that in a sense. And now, now they're clearly the second best team in the game. They've not won an event so far this year. If they do come through and win Major 3, Major 4, and the World Championship, then I guess the question is once again open. But if the season continues as it has, then I think the FaZe kind of era never really came to fruition, to be honest. And of course, OpTic and FaZe right now are fighting for the kind of #1 seed for the World Championship. But of course, right now there's probably only one team that should be favored, at least in this head-to-head matchup, right? FaZe in general seem to be slightly better against the best of the rest, if you know what I mean. So when they're playing against other teams, FaZe usually almost win all their series. But for some reason in this one, OpTic, sometimes they slip up against some opponents or have like different like strengths in matchups and stuff. But this particular series seems to very much be favoring them. And even as Arcitys says, 0-5, it happens, just got to work on it, right? But I'm sure it is playing on their minds like every single series they play. I thought this would have been a big one yesterday for them to kind of get over that mental issue that they might be having against OpTic. But it does seem to be the case, at least to some degree. Let's look at this then as we close out the video. So these are the CDL points as they presently stand. FaZe are still just above OpTic. That's largely due to the fact that FaZe have made grand finals of both majors. That nets them 50 points each, I'm pretty sure, for each grand finals they've reached, which is pretty impressive. Obviously, of course, 1-1, they got 65 for that, but they came top 6 of the other one. So I'm pretty sure that's where the deficit is. But at FaZe this season now, I believe they're 17-6. So they've lost 6 series. I think that doesn't include, I'm guessing, the Prime Classic. So they've probably lost like 7 series or whatever it was. And 5 of those have been to OpTic. But I'm pretty sure out of those 6 series they've lost, 4 of those 6 defeats have been to OpTic. One of the other ones, I guess, was to Los Angeles Guerrillas in the final of Major 2. I think Seattle have also beaten them maybe in one of the group play games, or I'm pretty sure Seattle might have been the culprits for that other defeat. But I think FaZe are 17-6, OpTic is 17-4, and like OpTic lose to more other teams in general, but FaZe always lose to OpTic, right? Which of course down the line is probably where you want to be, because right now they're #1, #2. As it goes into the World Championships, does it really matter if you're #1, #2 seed? That's a question you might ask, because if you're the #1 seed, you'll play the #8 seed. If you're #2, you'll play #7. But who knows what's going to be the easier matchup, right? Because this bottom half of the league is absolutely ridiculous. Like, as I've said, Ravens, Breach, and Guerrillas, they're looking like 3 of the weaker teams in the league right now, with Minnesota Rokkr, the Toronto Ultra, Subliners, they all making a big comeback. I don't know what to think about the teams in 7th, 8th, and 9th right now. Paris and chalked, obviously, but there's no doubt in my mind it's going to be an absolutely incredible finish to the season. Really, all of these teams need, down here, they need a good major run. Like, if you're Subliners, they were on 60. Yesterday's victory up against the Ultra would have been massive for them. They'd have been 70-70, which would have been a very different story to 60-80 and still being 20 points behind, getting into top 8. But realistically, all these teams just need a very good couple of majors. If one of these teams makes a grand finals or even wins the entire thing, then, well, they're going to find themselves in the Los Angeles Guerrillas position of relative comfort. But very much intrigued to your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, hit on a like button, tell us a YouTube god, this is a good video, and I think you should see it as well. And I've grown the competitive Call of Duty community. Thank you as always, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.